This is Stonehenge. Well, actually, this is Stonehenge. It's a Neolithic monument near Salisbury in England, and it allows us to contemplate what life was like around 4,000 years ago, revealing the secrets of the past. Today, I'm going to be explaining what we do know and what we don't about it, and building it in Minecraft. The earliest evidence of any construction on the site comes from around 3000 BC, when the ditch and mound upon which Stonehenge now sits was created. Later, at around 2500 BC, the blue stones were added. These are the smaller stones that sit in the inner circle of Stonehenge today, and we know that those were from South Wales. Over the next 500 years, we know that much was added to Stonehenge, including the large stones which are called sarcens, placed in the outer circle. They also rearranged the blue stones to form the inner circle, and added the lintels across the top. Archaeologists have discovered that the large sarsen stones came from around 25 kilometres away, which has caused much speculation about how the stones were transported to where Stonehenge sits today. We do, however, know that the stones would have looked quite different when they were built, originally being quite bright white stones. Now, most people's interest centres around the people that were responsible for building Stonehenge, and unfortunately there is still much mystery around this, around why it was built and who exactly built it. However, there was a nearby camp constructed likely for people who were building Stonehenge, and there they found animal remains that could have been traced back from the north of Scotland. Now, these were likely animals that they would have eaten, and it could suggest that the site was significant to the whole island and not just those in the area. This is also backed up by the fact that the blue stones were from South Wales. And here is my final outline of Stonehenge. You can see the larger sarcens making up the outer circle, and some of the smaller blue stones represented in the middle as well. So we know that Stonehenge is aligned to the solar calendar, possibly suggesting some of the rituals carried out on the site. At the summer solstice, the sun rises over one of the heel stones, which sits outside of the famous circle. At the winter solstice, the sun sets between two large sarcens, one of which has now fallen over, but the one still standing is actually the tallest out of all of the stones, and as the sun sets, it flashes off of the altar stone. This could possibly indicate that the winter solstice is actually more important to this society, as it signals that the days are getting longer and the life is returning to the landscape. Now, there are so many mysteries surrounding Stonehenge, one of which being, was it ever fully completed? For example, on the outer circle, there are smaller outer stones, suggesting it never formed that complete circle. However, during a dry summer more recently, parch marks were found on the soil, suggesting that the circle carried on. Another mystery of Stonehenge centres around the dispute as to whether or not the fallen lintel ever actually perfectly sat atop two sarcens. Some suggest that it fell during antiquity, as it is not as perfectly shaped as the rest of the stones. Many have also pondered when Stonehenge stopped having relevance to society. Now, obviously, it has continued to have an impact culturally, and not just through recent paintings of it, where it is presented very idyllically in a mysterious landscape. There were bronze carvings found on one of the stones, which is significant because it could suggest that it continued to play a ritualistic role. It is also interesting to note that lots of people believe stones were likely taken away from it since its creation, however it remains mostly intact. Some say this is particularly interesting as civilizations such as the Romans left it untouched, although a lot of people have conceded that it would have been a massive undertaking to bring it down again, and therefore many may have left it simply because it is hard to deconstruct. Here you can see that I've created the outer circle of Stonehenge, and now we'll begin on the inner circle, which consists of lintels, sarcens, and the blue stones. It is possible that these smaller blue stones are the more significant aspect of Stonehenge for a couple of reasons. Firstly, they are encased with the larger sarsen stones, possibly suggesting that they are there to protect them. Also, they were the things that were placed there first, after they built the ditch and the mound. This could suggest that they are really what Stonehenge was built for, and then the later circles were just built around it in following years. Today, Stonehenge is owned and maintained by the English Heritage Charity. It attracts over 1 million people every year to come and see it, and puzzles archaeologists and historians alike as they consider the possibility of the people living on this island long before the Roman invasion or the Anglo-Saxons. Today, the monument is visible from the A303, frequently causing large backs up in traffic as people stop to marvel at the stones. However, I think this is really interesting to consider the fact that people have been doing this for over 4,000 years. We know that at this time the rest of England was dense forest. However, Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain, a large expanse of land with no trees. They also famously built it on a large mound. Therefore, when walking up to Stonehenge, it must have been a really significant sight to come out of dense trees onto a large expanse of plain land and to see the beautiful bright white stones towering above you. Stonehenge retains much of its wonder today, best evidenced by the fact that lots of people still come to visit. I think it's really interesting that thousands and thousands of years ago, people across Britain would have come to visit it, and now today it has a global appeal with people coming from all over the world to see the famous stones. As much fun as building it in Minecraft was, it cannot beat going to see the real thing, so I would definitely put it on your travel bucket list if you ever come to the UK. And with that, this is my finished version of Stonehenge. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like, and until next time you can find me over on Twitch.